Hello, welcome to my Florida garden. I'm Jane Jordan. I am an RHS trained horticulturist. I was also a feature writer for Florida Gardening magazine for almost 5 years. So I have designed and planted several gardens in the past, in England, in Michigan and in Florida. And this is my brand new garden. So I'm starting with a blank canvas. This is a walled garden. We've literally just painted the walls, haven't put any gates on yet, but we do have barriers up to stop the deer coming in because deer will eat everything. What I love about walled gardens is they're a microclimate. So they protect your plants from wind damage, and you can grow things up walls like climbers, and they will actually radiate heat off of them. So in the winter, your plants actually get more heat than they normally would. So I'm starting with a brand new garden. There are no pathways down, there are no gates, as I said, hardly any plants, but I want to give you an idea what I've got to work with here.
This garden has raised planters, covered planters and plant shelves designed into the main wall, with a patio in the middle, and at the far end is a small gazebo still under construction.
So I'm standing on my temporary path, which is actually some old roofing felt, but I felt it was important to not be overwhelmed by such a huge undertaking as starting a garden from scratch. So I needed some straight lines. I know that eventually there's going to be a path here, but more importantly, it gives me an edge to which to plant plants either side of. This is a plumeria, a bridal bouquet. It's quite an unusual plumeria, has less pests and diseases, and it has really unusual shaped leaves. So fast growing, grows to about 12 to 15 feet. Unusually for a plumeria, it is not scented. Most plumerias are highly scented. This one doesn't have a scent, unfortunately, but it's beautiful, so you just have to grow it anyway. The idea is, you may think, why have I planted them so close? But I'm going to attempt to train them into like an arch, a loose arch, but something I can walk through, because I feel that that will be just something really unusual to do. And I'm all about the unusual and doing things that other people don't normally do. So here are my crepe myrtles. These are black diamond crepe myrtles. Now they're deciduous, which means that they lose their leaves in fall and they will get them back in the spring. This one is a pink flower and this one is a purple flower. They are beautiful, but you will see them develop as time goes by. So this is my arched raised bed. I love raised beds. Firstly, you don't have to get down on your knees, and as you get older you need more things that are easy, waist height. But it's also in the shaded part of the garden. This area of the garden is quite shaded. In fact, this bed doesn't get any sun at all, which is great if you want a really shaded spot to plant shade-loving plants. The soil in this bed, garden compost, which I made myself. As you can see, it's just leaves, vegetable matter that's broken down. It's taken about a year, I guess, for that to break down to that stage. This, I'm going to put gloves on to do this, because I don't really want to put my hands into the native dirt. So this is native dirt. This is soil which I've literally taken out of the garden, and as you can see, it's pure sand, really. And as most of you know, that's what we have in Florida. It's pure sand. So to augment the soil, we need compost. And compost has all sorts of micronutrients. It is still breaking down, which is good because it puts nutrients to the plant's roots where it needs it. And you may ask, why not just plant in here in the compost, and why bother to add the native soil? The native soil actually has bacteria and it has microorganisms that adapt to the plant that you're bringing from goodness knows what nursery or out of state possibly. And it will benefit your plant because it will adapt it, it will climatize it to the native soil. And this is perlite. Perlite is an expanded volcanic glass, and it aerates the soil and it also retains water. So these three mixed together give you a perfect growing medium for most plants. Most plants need a well-drained soil. That is just across the board. Now you may wonder why I'm wearing gloves. I would recommend, especially if you're new to Florida, you always wear gloves, especially if you're touching the soil. If you're weeding, I would never be without my gardening gloves. We have venomous spiders, we have stinging caterpillars, we have all sorts of things that are going to sting you, bite you, fire ants being one. I can't remember the amount of times I put my hand in a fire ant nest, and gloves save you a lot of the time, so always wear gloves. My go-to tools are secateurs, always sharp, always keep them sharp, always keep them clean, that way you don't spread diseases from one plant to another. My shovel, this is the best thing, this is what I use all the time. These two things are what I use gardening 90% of the time, and obviously my gloves. So I have some plants here. This is Justica carnea, also known as the flamingo flower, and known as well as Brazilian plume. So this is a shade lover. I have grown it before in partial shade and it did okay, but it really likes more shade than light. So I am going to try and grow it in a completely shaded area. So I'm going to prune these flowers off. Always go down to a leaf node with sharp secateurs and just snip them off, and that one as well. And I'm actually going to take that down to the second leaf there. So if I was to prune this and didn't go down to a leaf node, which would be there, and I instead went under a leaf node, I would get dieback all the way down to that leaf node. So that would potentially introduce a disease or bacteria. So that's why you do that. So my second plant is Calathea lancifolia. It's actually, common name is the rattlesnake plant. Not exactly sure why it's called a rattlesnake plant. I think because of its very interesting foliage. It has a purple underside and it has sort of curly sort of leaves, but it's very beautiful. I love it. So the next plant is bromeliad. I just love the colour of this one, and it really works with my colour scheme I've got going on here. So generally, a rule of thumb, the softer and greener the leaves, the more shade they will take. If they're brightly coloured and or spiky, then they can take more sun. But this is going to be planted in the shade. This is a cryptopenthus, also known as earth stars. You can get them in different varieties. They're generally pinks to greys. Some have like green edges. This one has actually been scorched slightly by the sun. It's been in too much sun, but that will grow out, so I'm not too bothered about that. This is, I picked this up recently. Unfortunately, it's not in flower right now. It's an Amazon lily and likes a lot of shade. The leaves will scorch in too much sun. You can see scorch on this leaf already. This will have like a waxy white flower, so perfect shade plant. And then this is a peacock ginger. I just got this at a Sarasota County plant fair, and it had really pretty little pink flowers when I bought it. Unfortunately, they've all finished, but I will just trim this up. It makes a great ground cover and like shade, so it will be perfect. I imagine I can probably divide this as well, so that's something I might do. So if you want to learn how to divide plants, that will be something I will be doing in future.
I am placing the flamingo flower in the middle, as this will grow the tallest to about 3 feet. Next, the Calathea and the bromeliad, I'm going to put them each side of it. The cryptopenthus and Amazon lily I will plant in front, as well as the ginger. If you place them in pots and stand back, you can then see if you like your arrangement. So another plant I want to talk about, one of my most favourite flowers in the world, is a red rose. This is a great red rose for Florida. This is Don Juan. So this is a climbing rose. I've grown this before, and one of the most fantastic things about this rose is it's highly scented. It's just got the most delicious scent. This needs deadheading, so taking my secateurs. So normally you'd go down to the bud. Just because I want to make this bush up a little more, I'm just going to go down a little bit further.
and this one too, down to a leaf node. That looks good. Now, and it's got a couple of little black spots on it. I don't worry about black spot. I don't worry about holes from insects. If you have the right microclimate in your garden, your plants will pretty much take care of themselves. And that is one thing I do want to establish in this garden. I want it to be a haven for wildlife, for butterflies, for bees. I want to have a garden that is full of native and tropical plants, with a nod to the English aesthetics of a classic country cottage garden. I also want to encourage certain animals. I want to encourage opossums. I love opossums, and they are so beneficial. They will eat nasty things off the plants. They also eat ticks, which if you've got animals, if you've got dogs or cats, then you need opossums in your garden. So I'm thinking about a bed here, flowers or small shrubs, between my planter and my plant shelves, and I think the red rose will look amazing up this wall. I will probably put a trellis on the wall and let it just fall up the wall. So when we first started filming this, it was October. We are now in November, almost a month later. I actually did go ahead and plant this up with all the plants I explained before, and they will grow a little bit more. But in the meantime, I put a hook up and I'm growing my beautiful orchid here. So I think it looks pretty spectacular. This area here is just a holding area for my orchids, because not only is my garden under construction, but my house is under complete renovation as well. So the garden is having to happen alongside. We also planted a shady lady, a black olive tree. This will give more shade to the shady part of the garden, which is what I wanted, because I want to be able to grow shade-loving plants. And I've already got planted a couple of ferns. This one in particular is a fluffy ruffle fern, and I had to buy that because I love the name. But I've also got a begonia, I've got a coleus, I've got the Amazon lily, which came off in bulbs, and so basically I just split them up, put them around. Got another fern there, which I can't for the life of me remember its name right now. So my bridal bouquet plumeria is still in flower, which is great. Because the house has been under renovation, I've literally had to have plants in pots staged around the property, which means that now, because my garden is coming together at last, I've been able to actually plant things. So I've got, I think it's autumnera, I can't remember exactly what that's called, but it's a ground cover and it will spread around. This is a pineapple guava. It looks a little bit not as great as it should look, but it's been in a pot, it's been under a tree, which it really didn't like. But plants are pretty resilient, so I'm expecting it to come back, and it doesn't look too bad right now, but it will get bigger. And this will eventually grow into a tree. I have an Asian snow bush down here, which is just beautiful. I love this right now. This went into shock. This is an elder, and it's a native. And I had this planted in a big pot, but when I transferred it, it lost all its leaves. Poor plant went into shock and obviously didn't like the transfer. But I've watered it. I've taken care of it for the last couple of weeks, and it's actually coming back. You can see the new growth all over it. Next to it I have English thyme, and I have some curly cow as a nod to my vegetable garden. I can't actually build that right now because the house is under construction. It's going to be too close to the house, so I have to wait on this. But this is a testament to, even if you don't have a garden, you can grow vegetables or plants in pots, on a balcony, even on a windowsill. So I went ahead and planted my Dongwon red rose. I was going to plant it on the other side of the plant shelf, but when I watched the sun, which is always a good thing to do, to see how much sun the roses are going to get, I thought this would be a better position because it has actually some shade, which I think roses do better here in Florida. I cut it all the way down after it finished flowering, and it's doing really well. It's bushing up, and it's even got another bud on it. Okay, this is a bleeding heart vine in the flowers. They're really pretty. They're actually bracts. The white bit is the bract, the red bit is the flower. And I've grown this before, and they do amazingly well in sun or partial shade. So I planted 2 fishtail palms either side of the path, and I've been planting butterfly plants. I have 5 lantanas that I've planted. So you always plant in odd numbers. Obviously, if you plant in 1, that's going to be a specimen plant, but I always like to plant in 3s, 5s or 7s. It just gives a more naturalistic look to your planting. So obviously I've got 5 lantanas here, I've got 5 coreopsis there. These are great for butterflies. Unfortunately not today, don't have any butterflies, but normally they've got butterflies on them. This is a Brunfelsia, a yesterday, today and tomorrow plant. It actually starts off the flowers purple and they fade to white, and it will get big. It will get sort of like a big shrub. Some people do train them into trees. Generally, or when I've had them before, I've always just had them as a big shrub. This is a Chinese perfume tree. This is another plant that I've had in a pot for well over a year, so it was pretty root bound. But plants are, like I said, plants are really resilient. You know, once you plant them in the ground and give them a bit of tender loving care, they tend to come back. I've also got a Dombaya Seminole here. This was taken from a cutting from my previous house, and it has beautiful flowers that will be bright pink, and the bees absolutely love it. It normally flowers around December time, so I've got probably another month to go. So this is a Turk's cap, also known as a nodding hibiscus. Now this can get really big. It can get like up to 8 foot tall and sometimes same width across. But I am going to attempt to grow this into a tree because I think it would just be a beautiful specimen if it's in a tree. Plus it will give me room to grow stuff underneath. And in the background, my triangle palm that we've just planted. So that's it for this end of the garden right now. So this is a native tropical sage or tropical salvia. Just see the tiny flower coming, but this is a magnet for hummingbirds and bees. And once you've got one, you've always got it, because it self-seeds readily, which is great because we want to attract bees and hummingbirds in the garden. I'm going to actually plant this. I'm going to show you how I plant. The soil is sand, which isn't nice. It's great for free draining, but the trouble with having too much free draining soil is that the water just runs straight through, doesn't retain any moisture at the plant's roots. So I'm going to augment this hole with some homemade compost mixed with perlite. And normally I would say don't put soil underneath the plant because you want the plant's roots to go into the natural soil. But because this is so much like sand, I would say in this case just add a little bit just to get that moisture retention. So I'm going to just tip this out, and you can see the roots are at the bottom. It's not root bound at all, which is great. So I've got to put it in the hole. Just put some native soil around it. Okay. Okay. Then once it's actually planted, firm it in. You do this because you don't want any air pockets around the plant. You want to make sure the soil is in contact with all the roots. Sometimes if you've got a bigger plant, you can use your heel of your foot, which is called heeling in. And then later on, I will add some more mulch to that and I will water it in well. So today I'm going to be planting some zucchini or summer squash. I have some sieved homemade compost here, and this is literally from my compost bin, and it's been put through a fine sieve. This sieve I've had years. A family member gave it to me,
and it is one of the best tools for gardening. So I'm going to put some of that in here. Next I have perlite, which I always add, especially with seeds, because it retains moisture. And just give that a mix round. I mean, I have no hard and fast rules. I just do what I think looks right. I mean, to me, that's just like baking, really. You know, you're making a cake, you just add the ingredients, it looks good. Just fill these cells up with the compost. Move it over. Tap it down just to make sure it's even. These seeds are big, that's why I'm only doing 6 of them. I'm sure we all know that growing vegetables, you tend to plant a whole seed packet, and then you've got a glut of vegetables that you can't actually use, or they actually go bad before you even pick them. So 1 in each cell. Put those back in the packet, save those for later. So if you were going to do succession sowing, you'd maybe sow those in another month or so, and then just a tiny bit more compost sprinkled over the top. And that's it. That's basically the easiest thing in the world to plant some seeds. I will water that in well, and I will put that in a partially shaded spot. I won't put seeds that I'm growing in full sun. Our sun's just too hot, and it will just burn the seedlings. So just a word about fertilizer and what to look for in fertilizer. The 3 main elements are nitrogen, phosphorus and potassium. You can buy any fertilizer, as long as it has those elements, you're good. And then there are other micronutrients like zinc and boron, calcium. Can't remember them all off the top of my head, but nitrogen is essential for plant development and growth. Phosphorus gives the plant an ability to use and store energy, as in photosynthesis. Potassium gives the plant resistance to disease, and it also plays an important role in the movement of water, carbohydrates and nutrients through the plant. So that's all I've got time for this episode. Thank you for watching, and until next time, bye.